four Canadian companies, four. They control 97% of America's entire frozen French fry supply. Not a slice of it, not a share of it, 97%. And here's what makes this extraordinary. The US government just sued those same four companies for running an illegal cartel. The country that depends on them is now taking them to court. That is where this story begins. To understand what is happening, you need to understand one company, McCain Foods, headquartered in New Brunswick, Canada, family-owned. And according to its own data, 1 out of every 4 fries eaten globally comes from its facilities. 1 in 4. Every fry at McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, statistically, there is a 25% chance it started in a Canadian factory. McCain runs 51 processing plants worldwide. And the United States, the most powerful economy on Earth, sources the overwhelming majority of its frozen potato supply from across its northern border. Those 4 processors, McCain Foods, Canadish Farms, Simplot, and their affiliates, together control 97% of the frozen potato market in the United States. Let that land. 97%. And Washington is suing them. The contradiction at the center of this trade war is not incidental, it is structural. On February 1, 2025, President Donald Trump signed executive orders imposing a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. The stated reasons? Trade imbalance, fentanyl, leverage. What was not mentioned, what no official briefing foregrounded, was what Canada actually sends across that border. Canada exports roughly $40.5 billion in agricultural goods to the U.S. annually, including $1.7 billion in frozen French fries and other frozen potato products, according to Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. $40.5 billion in agriculture alone every year, and the potato numbers go deeper than most people realize. The United States remains the primary export destination for Canadian potatoes, accounting for 96% of seed, 93% of fresh, and 91% of French fry exports in the 2023-2024 production year. Seed potatoes, fresh potatoes, frozen fries. 3 categories, 1 dominant supplier. This dependency is not partial, it is not convenient, it is structural. And then consider this one number. Canada shipped 680.7 million pounds of frozen potato products to the US during the 4th quarter, in a single quarter, not annually. 680.7 million pounds in 3 months. That is the volume holding American fast food pricing together. Now here's where the story shifts, because while all of this data was on the table, while analysts, processors, and trade economists knew exactly how exposed the US was, President Trump made a different kind of statement. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything from Canada. He said it publicly. He said it multiple times. And the trade data said something structurally incompatible with that claim. The U.S. produces approximately 44 billion pounds of potatoes annually. That sounds like a lot. It is not enough. American domestic processing infrastructure for frozen food cannot replace Canadian supply at scale. Retooling would take years. Capital investment that no American company had committed to. The math simply does not work. On August 1, 2025, the escalation continued. A 35% tariff on all Canadian goods not covered by the CUSMA USMCA framework. Agricultural products meeting CUSMA origin rules kept their exemption. But the political uncertainty, the threat of future renegotiation, the pattern of escalating pressure created the kind of investment paralysis that processors on both sides of the border had warned about for months. By October 25, 2025, Trump threatened an additional 10% tariff increase. This was not hypothetical, it was a pattern. Here is where the geopolitics becomes personal. You have already been paying for this trade war every time you ordered fries. During the 5-year period that vegetable oil prices rose by 50%, the average menu price of McDonald's French fries went up 134%, from $1.79 in 2019 to $4.19 in 2024, 134%. In 5 years. But the price problem is not just the potato. Canada also supplies the canola oil used to fry it. 2 inputs, 2 Canadian-sourced commodities, both under tariff pressure simultaneously. And there is a reason U.S. processors have not simply moved production south. It's cheaper for processors to buy potatoes from Canadian growers and manufacture French fries on this side of the border because of our, quote, monopoly money, the Canadian dollar. The currency differential makes Canadian production economically irrational to abandon. American processors could not substitute. The math did not support it. The total estimated cost of the tariff regime to the average U.S. household, $1,200 per year. And the industry acknowledged what was happening. A 25% tariff on frozen, fresh, and seed potatoes is extremely disruptive. But Canada's potato sector does have a few advantages. Advantages. That word is the pivot point of this entire story. On April 28, 2025, Mark Carney won the Canadian federal election. His platform was not primarily about economic policy, it was about resistance. The campaign was a referendum on the United States. And immediately after his victory, Carney said this: "Trump is trying to break us so he can own us." 6 words. No diplomatic cushioning, no softening. That was the signal to Washington, to markets, to Canada's agricultural sector that the political mandate for capitulation did not exist. On June 16, 2025, at the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Apunta, Trump and Carney pledged a 30-day window to reach a bilateral trade framework. It had the tone of a breakthrough. 11 days later, on June 27th, Trump suspended trade talks, announced new tariff measures. 30 days. They did not last 11. And the trade flow data confirmed what was already shifting beneath the surface. From January to March, Canada exported 512,621 tons of potatoes to the US, compared to 427,467 tons from April to June, a drop of 85,154 tons, or 17%. That 17% decline was not caused by a Canadian embargo. No formal restriction was imposed. The drop reflected market uncertainty, contract renegotiation, and the beginning of a supply chain reorientation that Canadian processors had started exploring quietly. Throughout the current trade negotiations with the United States, the Canadian government has steadfastly defended our workers and businesses. That was not a negotiating position. It was a door closing. Here is what most coverage has missed. Canada does not need to impose a single export restriction to permanently alter the U.S. potato supply chain. It only needs to find alternative buyers. Prince Edward Island potato growers began exploratory talks with buyers in Indonesia. Canadian trade representatives entered preliminary conversations with ASEAN member states. The logic is not retaliatory, it is commercial. If the U.S. market carries tariff uncertainty and Asian markets are expanding, the incentive to redirect supply is self-executing, no government order required. Carney stated it directly and publicly. The decades-long process of ever closer economic relationship with the U.S. is over. Our strengths of being tied to America are now our vulnerabilities. Our economic strategy is to change rapidly. He did not say this as a threat, he said it as a policy declaration. The supply chains, the processing agreements, the just-in-time delivery infrastructure, all of it was being reassessed, not as an asset, as a strategic liability. And here is what the United States has no answer for. Domestic potato production of 44 billion pounds annually is insufficient to replace Canadian frozen processing capacity at current American consumption levels. The processing plants are not there. The contracts are not there. The timeline to build them is measured in years, not months. In August 2025, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada spokeswoman Stephanie Piel issued a statement. It was careful, it was measured, and it was the most consequential sentence of this entire episode. Fluctuation in trade occurs for various reasons. More time is needed to understand the true impact of the U.S. administration's tariff policy. Read that carefully. She did not say the pivot is happening. She did not say it is not. She said more time is needed. That ambiguity, deliberate, official, unresolved, is the threat itself. The Canada-US trade war over French fries and food tariffs in 2025 did not produce a winner, it produced a restructuring. Canadian processors have the political mandate, the currency advantage, the processing scale, and now the Asian market access to redirect supply that American fast food infrastructure has no domestic alternative to replace. If that supply shifts, not through embargo, not through policy, but through commercial realignment, the structural question is not what American consumers will pay for fries in 2026. The question is where those fries will come from at